Welcome, friends. Dr. David here, and I'm here with Suzanne Lie. Suzanne Lie is a spiritual guide for people. She's also a channel, and she's also an author. And I recently came across Suzanne and her work, and I just really took to it like a moth to the light. Those of you who know me well know that I really follow my intuition in my life, and in the areas of spirituality and healing, I have pretty high levels of discernment, and there's not a lot that catches my eye and ear these days, but I definitely was extremely attracted to Suzanne's work and reached out to her, and we started a friendship and both agreed that it would be a great idea to do an interview. We're actually going to do at least two interviews. One interview, which is this one, where I'm going to be interviewing Suzanne, and then we'll have at least one other interview where Suzanne interviews me. So let me bring Suzanne into the conversation. Suzanne, thanks so much for being with me on Freeing the Body and Freeing the Soul.
I am very happy to be here with you today. Thanks for asking me.
It's my pleasure and my honor. So this is a little bit unusual for me in the sense that normally when I interview someone, I have known them for longer than we've known each other in this life, but I'm sure we've known each other for a long time on many dimensions, and so this is probably a reuniting. And, one way to start out might be for me to share a little bit about what really struck me about your work, and then that'll put some seed thoughts out there, and then you could take the conversation in whatever direction you like. And I'd also like to make sure that at some point in the conversation, people find out a little bit more about your story and your journey in this life. But what really struck me about Suzanne's work is that she provides through her work a model of the multidimensional self that isn't just interesting, but it also is empowering, in the sense that for me, it really gave me, my mind, a really clear model to hang on to that opened up some new possibilities for me. This idea that I am this one multidimensional self, and within that, there are aspects of me that are extending and projecting into one or more three-dimensional existences, but there's also aspects of me that are projecting into one or more, say, fifth-dimensional existences that may be on other planets that are vibrating fifth-dimensionally. And there may be other aspects of my multidimensional self that are in dimensions that don't have physicalness at all. And that really resonated with me because it helps explain things to me that otherwise would be difficult to explain. Deja vu type experiences, knowingnesses that I've had that, and wisdom that I have that can't be explained through normal channels. It also explains my attraction to the Pleiades and to Sirius. It gives me some insight into why I was the way I was as a child and a teenager, the fact that I was focused on questions and perceptions that other people weren't, and where maybe some of my strength and courage and commitment might come from. And I just found it very, not only comforting, but also clarifying and empowering. And of course, I'd been exposed to bits and pieces of these ideas for a long, long time, but there was something about Suzanne's work that kind of put it together for me in a fresh way that really made it more real for me. And so I really wanted to talk to Suzanne more, and I wanted to share her with you. So I think there's some seed thoughts there that Suzanne can pick up on. And Suzanne, if you want to, I don't know where you want to take this, if you want to kind of springboard onto some of these ideas, or if you want to first start talking about your story or vice versa. And let me just turn it over to you for a while.
Okay, well, I will just talk a little bit about my childhood, like you did. So I'll kind of match what you said, and then we'll move on from there. I was always a kid that had myriad worlds going around in my mind, which I learned very young to keep to myself. And I could perceive these ornate stories of which I really knew as myself in another reality. I don't know how I knew that, but I did also know not to tell anybody. And then the Arcturians came into my life. First, the Palladians came in and started talking to me. Maitreya, who is in one of the Palladian series, she's the female. So, therefore, I listened. And as I listened and followed my inner instructions, an entirely different view of reality unveiled itself progressively over time. And it had to do with the eras of the time, because remember, I started in 94, so it was a very different world than it is now, wasn't it, David? Back in 94?
I'm trying to remember.
It was very shut down.
I'm trying to remember what was going on in that time in 94. I was born in 56.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have put me, at about 38 years old. That was like 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was right about the time. I think that was a few years before the internet started becoming popular. So it was a really different time. The pace of things was very different.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the internet brought in unity consciousness on a global scale. So it's a very, very important thing. And now I heard that the internet was started by the military so they could give secret message to each other. And somehow it got into, non-military hands, and we ran with it. So it's a wonderful thing. I speak to people all over the world on a regular basis, and I can even see them on Skype. It's wonderful. The world is getting much smaller now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I think if people have discernment and they have clarity of purpose and they have proper boundaries, they can use the internet in a way that is really, really helpful. But not everybody has those things. But I think if you're properly prepared and your priorities are on straight, I think it can be a wonderful thing.
Well, I'm a bit of a different model than you, because you are modeling the discernment, which is, of course, vital. But with me, my modeling, what my path was, is that I had to listen to what was going on inside of me, because I was afraid that I was crazy. And I had to get a Ph.D. in clinical psychology to really prove to myself that I wasn't. And luckily it was a program that was based on all these types of issues. And so therefore I was like the resident psychic in my class. But that was wonderful because I got an opportunity to be recognized for myself. And that was way back in the early... That was before I even got from the Arcturians. That's before I started channeling the Arcturians. So I had to have that type of training and have that type of format around me to convince myself that I wasn't crazy.
So how did you validate for yourself that these were legitimate, valid communications and conversations?
Well, for one thing, if I listened to those communications, my life went very smoothly. And when I didn't listen, my life would start, running into barriers right and left. So I was being offered a roadmap, a multidimensional roadmap. Now, the other thing is that I grew up going to the church, and I had a personal relationship with Jesus. I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John 4 or 5 times, underlined it, talked to Jesus all the time. I felt that feeling of a higher dimensional being. And so then later on, when these higher dimensional beings were talking to me, I could trust it, because it was easy to trust Jesus because that's accepted by most people. And so then when I got that same feeling of unconditional love and total acceptance that came inside of me, then I could say, okay, this is real. This is coming from that same place.
That's beautiful. I remember, I grew up in a kind of agnostic family that culturally identified themselves as Jewish, but were not religious people. And I remember that a couple of times where I did go to Jewish temple, I was very uncomfortable. I think I was picking up on the Zionist type of energy that was uncomfortable for me, and I never really related to the God of the Old Testament. And I fortunately, my parents were totally okay with me thinking for myself, and it was no big deal. And I didn't think about religion anymore until I was about 13 years old, and I was in junior high school. And I grew up in the West Hollywood area, and the junior high school that I went to was about a mile away from the Hollywood Presbyterian Church. And on Thursdays after school, a group of us would walk over to the church, and we'd play basketball for about an hour, and then we'd go upstairs into this room where we would have what they called fellowship. And, I just knew that I liked how I felt in that room. And there was some deep comfort that I think is similar to what you were experiencing. And then many years later, I realized that I was feeling that energy of Jesus, that Christ consciousness. And now I feel very, very close to Jesus. I call him Yeshua, and feel like we've got a really good relationship going. But I just wanted to share that because it's, I think that may be another thread of our connection, is that we both really, in various ways, are very close to Yeshua and have that kind of discipleship. And so I just wanted to share that with you.
Yes, and also another similarity is that my parents weren't religious at all. We would go as a family to church on Easter because my mother would make hats. She was very, very creative, and she'd make a matching outfit for me and her, and matching hats, and it was basically to show off. But the church was my babysitter. So my grandmother had me a lot, and walking distance was this huge Methodist church in Glendale that was ancient. And so I would go there for day camp and for this camp and summer camp and every other kind of camp. And I had a really good girlfriend that went with me that lived next door to my grandmother. And we would ditch the school and we would wander all around this huge church and play in the yard, in the different empty rooms, and play the pianos and write on the clock. But it became it was an ancient, it had a very strong energy field because it was an old church, and it felt familiar. It felt cozy. And then when I got baptized, that felt like nothing. I said to my brother, "Oh, that tickles, doesn't it?" That meant nothing because that was like something that they were doing, that somebody else was doing. And so my relationship with the higher realities was very, very personal. And I basically had not a single person to talk to about it at all until the Arcturians said that it was time for me to make a website, which I didn't even know. Well, it had one experience of a brief website that some, I think it was a university in Idaho or something, they were doing a test and they wanted to find out if websites were a viable thing for advertisement. So I went in and talked about my spiritual stuff, and that was the end of that. And they recited that no, that the website was never going to go anywhere and that no one would ever make money out of it. So much for that research, right?
So, just for the listeners so that they're not lost, can you give them sort of like a Reader's Digest little sort of primer on the Pleiadians, the Syrians, and the Arcturians?
Yes, absolutely. We are not the only planet that has life. Now, this is news to still a lot of people. There's still a lot of people on Earth that believe that we are the only place that has life. Even though they see pictures of the galaxy and see that we are a teensy, teensy, teensy little tiny, tiny speck amongst a zillion specks that are much larger. But it's kind of threatening to a lot of people. I don't understand why. To me, it was always very comforting. But there are other planets, well, actually, they're galaxies or worlds. The Pleiadians is a star cluster, and they're relatively close, and Sirius is relatively close. And then I'll save the Arcturians because they're kind of in a different category. Okay, so like I said, I'd always had dreams, and I'd always written everything down. And so when the Pleiadians came in, I looked it up, and the Pleiadians, they, maybe people have heard of Billy Mayer, and the Pleiadians revealed themselves to Billy Mayer, I think it was in the 50s or something, in Switzerland. And it was a woman, and the Pleiadians... Pardon?
Her name was Simjasik.
Thank you. I never could say that right, so I'm glad you said it. Okay. And Pleiadians look very human. They're tall and thin and usually have blue eyes and blonde hair. The very first galactic being that came to me was Maitreya. And Maitreya was a tall, blonde Pleiadian, and she started talking to me. And then I think the Arcturians came in next. Now, so the Pleiades is a star cluster, and it's not too far away. And there are myriad different beings that live there. Then most of them are Pleiadian, but they have other beings as well that aren't Pleiadian by nature. They have a really beautiful, beautiful, loving, wonderful society. They do not want any kind of overpopulation, and so their homes are like these wonderful little crystal domes that with their mind they can open it up or make it so you can see through it or make it so that it's private, and they are very open with their mating and with their choices of living together. Sometimes there'll be several, sometimes it's just two. They live in the now, they live in the one. There's no judgment. They'll have like a huge, like a violet temple, huge, like a huge crystal temple. And then around that temple, there's all this greenery, and then you see these little patches of these domes that are all different colors and depending on what the occupants do. And they have been flying around the universe for a very long time. So I'm just going to leave it there. I could probably talk for the entire hour on the Pleiades, but that's the way to think of them. They are probably the first ones that most of us will come in contact with because they look very human.
What is their relationship with Earth and humanity?
They actually lived here for a while. They were some of the earliest people that were on Earth. The Pleiadians were early on Earth. The Syrians were early on Earth. And the Andromedans kind of popped in and out. And the Arcturians, the Arcturians that I'm speaking with are in the 10th to 11th dimension. They don't have form. Other people, I think, are speaking with Syrians on a lower frequency that might have a form. But, so they came, and I always forget the name of where they came from. But they came from a different solar system. And they're travelers. And they came here. And when they came, they were young and they were new, and they kind of made a mess of it. Just like humans have made a mess of it. And then they left. The Syrians also came here. Now Sirius, there's Sirius A and B, and they think there's a Sirius C that you can just sort of see because it makes the other planets warble. The Syrians, the Pleiadians are light-skinned and blonde, and so they tended to occupy the northern hemispheres because they were blonde and blue eyes, and if they were too close to the equator, it was not comfortable for them. And then, they left and went off, and they made some mistakes. And then the Syrians came, and I'm not exactly sure of what the timeline is of who came first, probably within the same couple thousands of years. And the Syrians tend to be of a darker colored skin with darker hair, and some of them are actually aquatic beings such as whales and dolphins. They enjoy taking that form as well. And these are all ascended realities that they can create any form that they wish. And so the Syrians came, and a lot of them came more to the Tigris-Euphrates area. And they did the same thing, and they made a mess of it as well, and then they left. And the Arcturians came to assist Gaia because things were not going well for her. And Lemurian, well, I don't want to get into too much ancient history. I'll confuse everyone. So I'll just stay with this. And they later formed an alliance with the Arcturians. So there was an Arcturian, Pleiadian, Syrian alliance, and there was also an Arcturian, Syrian alliance, and an Arcturian, Pleiadian alliance. And this was after the Syrians had evolved more completely, and the Pleiadians had evolved more completely. And then they connected with the Arcturians, and they have been overlighting Earth for millions of years, wanting to protect her. Because from their perspective of reality, it's much like if you travel into the mountains, like we love to go into the mountains. So to me, trees are alive beings. A mountain isn't a live being. The lakes are alive beings. And when people travel different planets and different galaxies, they realize that a planet isn't a live being. It's an alive being. And so they have all been working with Gaia for millions of years now to assist her. Because there has been some pretty dark people that have taken resonance on her planet and made great destruction. So I'll stop for there and see if you have any questions, something I left out or something you'd like me to add.
I'd like to go deeper into the relationship between the Pleiadians and the people on Earth. Is your understanding that part of what happened was that the Pleiadians mated with the native Earth females?
That's not exactly part of my understanding, no. The Pleiadians came before there was any Earth people.
So could you go into your understanding of when you talk about the Pleiadians making a mess of things and maybe not having the greatest wisdom at the time, I'm wanting to get more into the story about what their particular interest is in Earth and in this particular Earth timeline, and the role and what their relationship is with humanity and with the Earth, and what are the historical antecedents of that.
Okay. Now, just to say to others, I can only pull together what I have gotten from all that I've read and all that I have personally received. There is myriad stories about everything that I'm going to talk about, and so if you have a different story, that's fine. But one of the things that the Pleiadians did, in the early Earth, there was like a protection that came all around the planet. And the Pleiadians were partially responsible for this falling down, as well as Assyrians. And so Earth used to have like a shell around her that was protected. It was like a big dome that protected her. And this was back when she was a baby planet, of course, and that dome probably was meant to, almost like an amniotic sac that's filled with water, and then when the baby is born, then the amniotic sac breaks and the water is no longer around there, and that protection of that womb is no longer there. Is
that what is sometimes referred to as the firmament?
The firmament, thank you. That is the word. I lost the word. Yes, that was the firmament. Now you have to realize that planets are alive and they go through infancy just like people, and they get born just like people. And in some manner, the Pleiadians and the Syrians were almost like the doctors that gave birth. And through bursting that firmament, the planet then was in a place of vulnerability, but it was vulnerable because it was born. So the baby is safe within the mother, hopefully, most of the time. But once the baby is born, then the baby is independent of the mother, and hopefully the mother is one that's going to care for them. So you could say that it was a mistake that the Pleiadians and the Syrians came and fractured, burst, pierced the firmament, but there are no mistakes and there are no accidents. Earth was ready to be born. But because they were there at the birth, so to speak, and because they loved the planet, they have been in very much of a protective mode for Gaia, for the planet of Gaia. Now, since 99% of the damage that has happened to Gaia has been through the humans that live on Gaia, they have come to work with the humans to see if they could find some receptive humans who would be able to send out information of, look what you're doing to your Mother Earth. She is not indestructible. And there was an early society of Lemuria, and which was in the Pacific Ocean, and an early society of Atlantis, which was in the Atlantic Ocean. And the two of those kind of had a fight with each other. Now, there's a whole bunch of different stories, of which I won't go into all of them. But But basically what happened is because of their fighting and their warrioristic ways, Lemuria sank and Atlantis sank. But when Atlantis was on the verge of sinking, Gaia sent out a call. She said, I'm going to fall off my axis. I can't have another continent go now. So she called out for light beings, would you please come enter my incarnation? And so a lot of us came, and we came from higher dimensional areas, and we volunteered to take on this fragile little earth vessel. And we stayed for the duration. We said, we will stay with you until you are well and until you are ready to even move into your higher frequency of self. So just like we would have a babyhood and a childhood and adulthood and a majorityhood, she has her third dimensional self and a fourth dimensional self, and now she's coming into her majorityhood of her fifth dimensional self. Now, I know that's a lot for people that don't know any of this, but you can always go to my sites, and I talk about all that stuff forever. If you go to the www.multidimensions.com and you go to the journey section and start at the beginning and read all the way through. I start very, very preliminary and take you all the way through. And then you can jump onto the blog where it's really the latest of the latest. But all right, so just in case you're totally confused, that's where you can go, multidimensions.com. And start at the beginning. Go to the journey. At the top it says the journey, and that's where all the writings are.
So one of the things that's fascinating to me in your work is the idea that from the perspective of my multidimensional self, that I'm simultaneously could be a Pleiadian and I could be an Earthling.
Absolutely.
That adds an interesting spice to the story.
Yes, and we're much more than just one. But besides the fact that this particular life stream, which is holding your earth vessel, has fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all these different higher frequencies of yourself, we, humanity, are a mix of the Pleiadians, of the Sirians, and then there's also some Alpha Centaurians who were close. They're close in galactic terms, and they have incarnated and given their seed to humanity, and Tausetians as well have done so. So we are a mix of all these, we humanity are a mix of all these different galactic beings who came to Earth and contributed their DNA to the progression of what would eventually be called an Earth human.
Now, what about the people that are playing the bad guy role? Like, what about the Cabal? Are they descendants of the Draconians, or where do they fit into the picture? And as a follow-up to that, it seems like they've done a great job in terms of highlighting the contrast, and it seems like they're on their way out.
Yes. Okay, so I'll begin at the beginning. There was a huge galactic war between the forces of the power over and the forces of the power within. And that war waged for a long time. And now the Draconians, the Arachnoids, the Zetas, there's different beings that were the power over. Whereas the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, they are the power within. So they seek their power within, and they think of all people as being one. The power over others. Now, the power over others are beings that are hatched from an egg. If you look at all of the lizard kingdom, well, actually, or the dinosaur kingdom, they came from eggs. And the mother hatched a bunch of eggs and covered up with dirt. And then they began to hatch. And the ones that hatched first became strong because they ate the other ones that hatched later. And the ones that somehow were able to survive long enough to find cover so that they weren't also eaten in return are the ones that got to live. And so this is how they were born. Whereas the humanoid species grew up in one or two, grew up inside of a mother who loved that, hopefully loved it, and then came out, and then the mother held the baby, and the baby suckled off of the mother, and was loved and was part of a family and was protected and took a long time to grow up. Now, there are civilizations that have the power over, and they all have some part of that draconian and or arachnoid. Now, if you look at a spider, spiders have a nest. Spiders lay up to 100 eggs. When the baby spiders hatch, they eat each other for nutrition, and they'll even eat the mother. The mother lets the babies eat them, eat the mother, and then the strongest ones go on and the weak ones die. Survival of the fittest. So if you look at Earth history, one of the earliest, I think it was the paleontological time or whatever, there was dinosaurs. Okay, so now when they had the Great Galactic War, and eventually the Draconians and the power over, one's lost. So the Draconians, they came to Earth. They said, wait, look at who was here first. We were here as dinosaurs before any of those weak little humanoids were there. We're going to Earth. So they weren't thinking, oh, I'm going to be evil. They were thinking, this is my planet. We're going to go there. And but remember, their power over. They are trained. If they want something, they have to step on somebody or take from somebody or kill somebody. It's like, that's just how it goes. So it's really important when we think in terms of the polarities of the dark and the light, that we don't have fear or hate or anger towards the darkness. They just are. And back to the Jesus story, since that's my favorite story. When Jesus died, he said, "Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do." So he set down that in this Piscean age, we are supposed to be able to just forgive. Now, here's the thing, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because when we send forgiveness and unconditional love and violet light to that which we have deemed as evil and bad and terrible, then not only do we protect ourselves, but some of those people actually take it in and they actually begin to change.
It's interesting because I've heard from reliable sources that some of these cabal families, some of the younger generations have really come over to the light.
Yes.
And it's kind of freaking those families out.
Yes, they have. I've been hearing that a lot. And also, I'm going to tell you an experience I had with the Arcturians, which is right there. So I was writing something, and the Arcturian said, "We want you to go inside and face the darkness." Okay, so I take orders. I'm a good little soldier. So I went inside myself, turned around inside. And I was in this dark place, and there was the Dracs and all these coldly, bad, dark people. And I was going to go in and send unconditional violet fire, but once I went in, I started crying and I started sobbing because I started seeing how some of these people, I started seeing how all of these, quote, evil people were young, and they were once young, and when they came in young, they were indoctrinated. They had to go through these horrible initiations, and they were trained to be dark. And all I could do was just give compassion. And since that time, something like really changed. And so I don't have to hate or fear or be angry at. And unconditional love is the healing force of the multiverse. And that is a gift that Jesus left. And however, unconditional love is something that's a pretty novel concept to a huge percentage of humanity. Love is usually pretty conditional. If you do this, I will love you. If you don't do that, I won't love you. Unconditional love is, I love you even though you're a draconian. I send you unconditional love.
Yeah, one of the things I see a lot with my patients and my students regarding forgiveness is, first of all, a lot of them misunderstand what it is. And even the ones that do understand what it is, a lot of times their forgiveness is not very powerful because they do it prematurely. They do it as a subtle way to avoid what they're feeling or what they're thinking, and it ends up not being very potent. And yet I think a deep understanding of what forgiveness really is and where it fits into the picture is absolutely vital. And, to me, the blossoming of true compassion to me is like the crowning glory of a wonderful human existence.
Okay, so I'm back and I have my headset on, so hopefully that'll help. And
Okay.
I think that person is done slamming things around. Okay.
So I just made my comment about forgiveness and compassion.
Exactly. We have to forgive and compassion. Oh, and I'm glad you said that, because what I wanted to add to that is that we can't give away what we don't have. And so in order for us to give away unconditional love to another, we have to unconditionally love ourselves. And in order for us to give compassion to another, we have to give compassion to ourselves. And that was something that I talked about all the time when I was doing psychotherapy, is you can't give away what you don't have. You have to have that ability to give it to yourself before you even begin to know how to share it with another.
Could I ask you some questions to get your perspective from what you've learned from the Pleiadians and the Syrians and the Arcturians about some challenges that many of us on Earth are facing today?
Absolutely.
Oh, great. So in terms of the people that I know, in terms of some of the challenges that are being faced today, a lot of really good-hearted people are still having a lot of challenges in the area of finance and abundance. A lot of people in general are having a lot of challenges with their health, especially dealing with the impact of the GMOs and the toxins and the terrible topsoil and terrible water. So the health issue, the finance issue, and then also in terms of intimate relationships and sexuality, it seems like a lot of the higher potential for the sacred use of sexuality that people are becoming interested in is still very difficult for people to access. Either they don't have proper training or they don't have the appropriate partner. And yet, you mentioned about the Pleiadians and their lifestyle and the way they operate. And I just get the feeling that we're on the verge of a major breakthrough in these three areas, in the area of finances, in the area of health, and in the area of the sacred use of sexuality. And I was wondering if, from your experience and from working with these beings who have gone through more experience than we have, if you have any thoughts that you could share with our listeners on those three areas and what we might expect over the next few years.
All right. I'm moving to another room, hopefully, to get away from all that noise. Okay. So, if you can just give it to me one at a time.
Okay, so the three areas were...
Just do the first one, and then I'll answer, and then the second one, and then I'll answer, because I'm going to bring in the Arcturians, and when I do that, my 3D memory kind of disappears on me.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
So the first one has to do with this issue of so many light workers feeling constrained by their current financial picture.
Okay. So, now, one of the things that is occurring is that we have been living in complete illusion for humanity. We have been lied to, and everybody is just busy, following that buck and just getting some surviving. And it's not enough to just put our nose to the grindstone now, because we have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that they have been just printing out money like it's candy. And money is not based by gold. The money in the United States especially has no basis on gold whatsoever. It's just a piece of paper. And they need more money, they write another piece of paper. It is not backed by anything. And so it's an illusion. And as long as people allow that illusion to continue, it will not be fixed. It needs to be fixed. And because people always wait until it's, the end before they go, oh my heavens, what's going on? What's going on is that a very few people, like 3% of our entire country, owns 90% of the gold and the money, and the rest of us are just moving paper around. And this is a huge social issue that we have to address. And if people do the education, if people band together, if people find out what's really happening, then something, we can make that change. But we have to get out of, oh, woe is me, I can't make enough money. It doesn't matter. The money you're making isn't real anyhow. And figure out what is really going on with our society and address it. The United States is in big trouble. And part of that big trouble is that the whole campaign to be the land of, gold and honey, everybody got all into just gold and honey, and they lost contact with what was really happening. So, there is a very huge possibility that, the whole money thing just might fall apart. And so that's why we want to catch it before it falls apart. So it's hard to talk about the money thing without scaring people, but people need to be a little scared.
Are you familiar with any of the plans that are afoot to bring forth alternative structures that can work better?
Not on the third dimensional part, okay. No. So that would be you that would have to give them that information.
Okay.
That's I'm up in the higher dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you or the Pleiadians or Arcturians or Sirians would like to say about the financial issue, or should we go on to the next one?
No, they do have something they would like to say, and they're all going to talk together. Money is a third dimensional illusion. And as you expand your consciousness into the higher frequencies, you will find a generosity within your beingness. All of you. And there will be many ways, such as the Pleiadians. None of the higher societies have money. Only third dimensional society has money. And pretty much third dimensional Earth has money. Money has been used as a means to control. Higher dimensional societies, they work on barter, they work on sharing, they work on community. And they work on an energetic level. And instead of having it be that some people get most of the money and do very little, and the people that do the most get the least amount of money, which is pretty much how it is. So, all right.
Okay, so I like this format where you speak as yourself and then you channel. So should we go on to the next topic?
All right.
Okay, so the next topic has to do with intimate relationships and sexuality. And so many people have a sense that there's something more. There's a greater possibility for life experience in these areas. And yet so many people who have that sense still feel limited in their experience and their expression in the area of intimate relationships and sexuality. And I have a sense that we're on the verge of a major opening to some new possibilities in that area. So go ahead and just take that one however you'd like it.
Okay. This one is probably going to be kind of a combination because I'm me and I'm my higher self, and then I have a blend of me. And I think the blend of me is the one who's going to answer this one.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to start with a divine compliment. All right. Now, we are in our higher state. We are androgynous beings. We are male and female together. And when we move into a third dimensional society, we have to choose to be male or female. But that other component of ourself, we always feel inside of us. Now I'm going to talk about me a little bit with that, because I always felt that there was someone that was just for me. And of course, I didn't find that person when I was young. I didn't find that person in my first marriage with whom I had 2 kids. I didn't find that person until I had moved much more into my spiritual life, and I was able to learn to love myself and stick up for myself and leave a situation that was not a fit. And then I met my divine complement, and I instantly knew. We instantly recognized each other. We were both already in the course of divorce. The day that our divorce came final, at the same day, and he was from a different country, we got married. We went down to LA and we got married. And we've been married for 36 years. And I write about divine compliments in all of my books because that's a big part of my life. And I remember the first Visions from Venus was the first one. And when he read that book, he put it down and he said, it was the divine compliments was Lemira was the woman and Lemire was the man. When he put down the book, he said, "I'm Lemire." And I said, "Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you know that." And more people are coming to me saying, "I want my divine complement." Now, the thing is, we all have a divine complement, but we all make contracts before we come in, especially within this now. We decide, okay, I'm going to take an earth vessel, and these are the things that I want to write in my earth vessel. This lifetime, I have the opportunity of ascension, which means I have the opportunity of transmuting myself from my physical self into my light body self within one lifetime. And we've had millions of lifetimes in preparation for this. And so we write these contracts, and we stood in line and said, I want to give this a try. Now, the other thing is that the celestials, angels, higher beings, and the galactics, all the galactic beings, all of them, they knew that their knowledge would be needed actually right on the planet within that now. And so they shared a part of their multidimensional self, their lower multidimensional self, actually took a body. They shared their essence with a physical body, so that they could have a being that, as it matured, or even from very young, that would be in a communication. And many of us have, and I've talked to many, many people that are awake, and very often that awakening happens, that first little bit happens around 13. That's part of that. My mother was Jewish, so I'm half Jewish actually, but she didn't even know it. That 13, which is that changing into now you're becoming an adult. And that's very often when important dreams are had or important moments come, and you begin to realize, wait, I'm a little bit more than I thought I was. You have no idea who that is or what that is, but it's that learning to figure out who we are that gives us the power to actually be that component of ourselves. And those of us that have expanded our consciousness into higher frequencies of consciousness, and I talk a lot on my sites and stuff about the different states of consciousness, and your state of consciousness dictates your perceptions. You can only perceive what is in alignment with your state of consciousness. Because I have, through all these years, had risen my consciousness to a fifth-dimensional consciousness. I can perceive fifth-dimensional beings, but that wasn't always the case. So people are starting to raise their consciousness, and they're starting to remember. Wait a second. There's something I've been thinking about before I came in here about this special person that was like a me, that I want to find this me. And I've heard lots of stories from different people about divine compliments, and sometimes they just touch in with each other, and sometimes one of them is married or has some type of a situation and they don't want to leave that situation. And so they just know that they're divine compliments, and they know that they're both here and they communicate, but they aren't having anything sexual or even intimate. And sometimes they meet and they will share some time with that person, maybe even like a year or two, and then their divine complement crosses over. But then, because they had that time of making that intimate relationship, then they maintain that consciousness, and that's what activates their multidimensional consciousness. Now, sexuality with your divine complement is it's making love. Now, I had never made love until I was, 29 or something when I met my husband that I married. I had sex. Having sex is not the same as making love. And people want to have sex and have a hot orgasm. Okay, that is fooling around with the body, and but it's not going to feel the same as making love and merging and coming into a oneness with that person, and having an unconditional love be activated, and a sense of knowingness. So sometimes people say, oh, I want to raise a kundalini, I want to do this. That happens according to our divine plan. Before we took this body, we could see what was going to be the best for us. And so when it is within that divine plan, if we are in alignment with ourselves, if we can love ourselves enough to meet our divine complement, either on another dimension or in the physical plane, then we will meet them. But again, remember, your divine complement is yourself. So that is not what you think, oh, this blissful, easy relationship, because you are with yourself. So you will become very, very intimate and very, very close, but you'll probably have some pretty big fights because any way that we're fighting with ourselves, we're going to fight with our divine complement too.
It seems like all of these areas that we're talking about and we're going to be talking about, it's kind of the money, food, and sex conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like these are all areas where the cabal, the dark side, has really, really infiltrated.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it seems like this is where the action is in a lot of ways, or at least where it's precipitating. Is there anything else you want to share about the relationships and sexuality topic before we go on to the third one?
Well, there's money. I want to touch on to the money as well, and money, sex, and what was the other one?
So we already talked about the money. We did that first.
Okay, great.
And then just to give you sort of a linear playbook here, we already talked about the money, and then we just talked about the relationships and sexuality, and I wanted to see if there was anything else you wanted to say about that before we go to the third topic.
Just know that when you're in an intimate relationship with another person, that what's going on with you will occur within the relationship. Because you are sharing from a core level.
Okay, great. So, Suzanne, we're going to go on now to the third topic, which is the whole area of health, and especially health of the physical and etheric bodies of human beings, and how to deal with the challenges that we're dealing with now in terms of toxins, lack of nutrition in the soil, GMOs, vaccinations, heavy metals, all of this, chemtrails, all of this. So, my experience is, as a light worker here on Earth, I find that if I can have my physical and etheric body in pretty good shape, it makes things so much easier, but it's becoming more and more of a full-time job. And so I wanted to leave it open to you and to your friends to chime in here with any thoughts they'd like to, you and your friends would like to contribute to me and the listeners.
Okay, well, I'm going to share what happened with me, because I think it's like a prototype that happens and will happen with a lot of us, is that we are, as we raise our consciousness, then we begin to ignite our kundalini. Now, our kundalini lays latent in the base of our spine, and it goes up, it's inside our spinal cord. Now, since my kundalini is pretty active, I just say the word and I feel it coming up and down my spine. And it kind of like really does a triple turn when it comes to the back of my heart. Okay. So as I was moving through all of my processes, et cetera, and this was not that long ago, and I always had problem with weight and eating, and I was addicted to food. And addiction to food that is part of what the cabal has been doing. There are so many additives to food that are straight up addictive, that people really get addictive, especially junk food and all that kind of stuff. It's very addictive. And I was addicted to food. And so as I began with the process, and especially as my light body started to activate, my body just took over. And if I had a couple of times where the body said don't, and I ate it anyhow, and I choked. I mean, a couple of times I choked to the part that I was frightened. And so the next time when body said don't, no, thank you, body, I will not eat that. And I I just knew I would come to it, I would touch it, I would smell it, I would ask the body if it was okay. Body would say yes, body would say no. And what happened is that I lost like those 30 pounds that I've been dragging around forever, over about a year period, maybe 6 months. I don't remember. But our body knows. And as we tune into our body, as we love our body, we can pull that food up to us. When you go to the store, you can just touch it and say, how is this? What do you think about this body? And, I pretty much go to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, and I trust those two places pretty much. They seem to be like they're on the path. And and it's not that, this is good for everyone or this is bad for everyone or everyone should have this diet or no one should do that. What I tell people is that each of us are individuals. And we have our genetic history. We have the parts of our body that are strong and the parts of our body that are weak. And like my stomach is the weakest part of my body. I can't eat things that are hard to digest. And I tried that before, which made me gain weight and, but as you turn into your body will say, no, thank you. No, yes. Listen to your cravings. Now you can tell an addictive craving because it's usually when you're angry or upset. But if you have if you're hungry and you're craving, listen to it. Oh boy, I would give anything for some fruit. Have fruit. Boy, I need protein. Have protein. Really listen to your body because you are moving into a higher state of consciousness where you have a fourth and fifth dimensional awareness of the physical form that you are wearing. As we find our power within, we realize that we are not our body. We are wearing our body. And just like we attend to our car if it makes a weird noise or if it hates that kind of gasoline or it's driving weird like something's wrong with the tires, we take it in, we get it fixed. And we are inside of our bodies, and our body will tell us exactly what we need. And if we can't figure it out, then go to a nutritionist. But again, go to a nutritionist that respects you, that you are in your body. We all have, it's not a good way and a bad way to eat. It's what is good and bad for your particular body.
Thank you. Do you want to see if from other dimensions there's any comments on this topic as well?
All right. Beloved ones, we are the Arcturians speaking, and we wish you to know that your light bodies are increasingly coming online. And your light bodies are coming online because your consciousness is expanding into the fifth dimension, partially because the higher light is coming into your reality. However, if you do not meditate, if you do not ground yourself, if you do not study and listen to your inner guidance, then you will not be able to accept that higher light in a smooth and natural manner. So we remind you that what you put into your mind is every bit as important as what you put into your stomach. And what you put into your heart is vital. So do what you love, be what you love, walk where you love. Reroute your life. If you do not want to do something anymore, then know that you are the creator of your reality. And what you think about, you bring about. If you think, I'm trapped and I can't get here, I'm stuck here for life, then that is what you've created. On the other hand, if you think, I'm feeling complete with this experience, I think this is all that I can learn from this position, or with this partner, or in this place. Therefore, I open my heart and mind and highest intuitions and prayers and meditations to further guidance about how I will proceed into this next octave of my reality within my third dimensional earth vessel that I am wearing. And I will remember, most important, that I ground my earth vessel into the very core of Gaia, because I did not come to earth for me. I am already a great multidimensional being that resonates all the way back to source. I have taken a brief fragment of that self and put it into this physical body, not for myself, but for the planet Gaia. And when I connect to the core of Gaia from my grounding cord, the base of my spine, and let it run down through my legs and feet and into Gaia, then I open my crown chakra, my pineal gland, to my highest expression of self, and I open that portal as well. And I allow that highest energy field of myself to enter into my pineal gland, which shares that information with my pituitary gland, which shares that information through my entire body via my endocrine system, and activates all of my chakras into higher octaves. And remember to be grounded, 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 grounded.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and thank you to all of your friends. Let me, as we move toward wrapping up this conversation, let me just leave it open for you and your friends to share anything that they would like to share with our listeners in closing for today.
We would like to say to all of you that your planet, Gaia, needs you. Please remember that you did not take this habitation for your own personal needs. You chose this habitation to assist with healing and transcending your planet. Now, that is something that one person cannot do alone. So therefore, we ask that you share with as many people as you can what your process is, that you find groups that you resonate to, that you join those groups, that you go to those meditations, that you go onto those websites, educate yourself about what is occurring. Learn about the different dimensions of reality. Learn about what is happening now within your reality. Educate yourself. Education allows you to expand your consciousness. And when you expand your consciousness, you expand your perceptions. In whichever fashion that you might feel that you are trapped in your third dimensional reality. Once you expand your consciousness into your fourth and your fifth and your sixth dimensional realities, you will be able to see that way out. It was always there, but you just couldn't perceive it. Now, when we say out, we don't mean out of Gaia. We mean out of the patterns that your human self became trapped in. Your human self is your earth vessel, and you will take good care of it because it is the tip of the portal that is embedded within the body of Gaia. And you are a portal of light through which this higher energy field can flow through and into Gaia. Each and every one of you is important. And the more you connect with each other, that connection goes logarithmically, such as 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, beyond, beyond, beyond. So it is not so much just the numbers of people. When you hold a higher frequency, 3 people resonating to a full spectrum of your multidimensional consciousness is like thousands of people who are lost in the illusions of the third dimension.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
And we, the higher expressions of many of you, for many of you are Palladian, Syrian, Arcturian, we all say to you, we are here. Just call us. We will answer. So blessings from Sue as well. And I am very happy I got to talk to all of you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Just letting the listeners know you've been listening to a conversation between myself, Dr. David, the Cutting Edge Doc, and Suzanne Lie, and her multi-dimensional friends, whom she's very intimate with and very integrated with. And until next time, we'll close with love and peace. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.